Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We're going to step away from the noise of our world, the humming servers, the endless notifications, the traffic outside your window, and travel back to a time when silence was just golden. It was a sacred duty. We're heading to a medieval monastery, but not to witness battles or court intrigue. We're going to find a job there, arguably one of the most important and mind-numbingly meticulous jobs of the entire Middle Ages, becoming a scribe. You're about to trade your vibrant, noisy life for the quiet craft of creating a book by hand, one perfect letter at a time. It's the original ASMR, a world of satisfying scrapes and gentle sounds. But be warned, this is a world of extreme quiet. You might not last a day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel find other quiet souls like you. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. Let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The road you're on is less a road and more a suggestion of one, a muddy track carved into the green landscape by centuries of wooden cart wheels and weary feet. For days you've been walking towards this moment, leaving behind the familiar chaos of your village for a life you can only imagine. And then you see it. Rising from the rolling hills is the abbey, a collection of formidable stone buildings huddled together behind a high wall. It looks less like a house of God and more like a fortress against the world. Its sheer, unadorned walls seem to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. This is your new home, your new world, your new employer. An old monk with a face like a weathered map greets you at the gate. He doesn't speak. He just nods, his eyes assessing you, and gestures for you to follow. Your footsteps echo in the cavernous gatehouse, a stark contrast to the silence that seems to press in on you from all sides. He leads you through a stone cloister, a covered walkway surrounding a square garden. The air here is cool and smells of damp earth, rain-soaked stone, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax. Every sound you make, the shuffle of your worn leather shoes, the rustle of your tunic, your own nervous breathing, feels like a shout in a library. You are brought before the abbot. He explains the foundational principle that governs this entire community, the rule of Saint Benedict. It's a book of precepts written over 700 years ago, a complete guide to a life of prayer and work, or et labore. And at the very heart of that rule is the virtue of silence. He explains that the tongue is a dangerous tool. Idle chatter leads to sin, to gossip, to pride. Silence, he tells you, allows the soul to listen, not to other men, but to God. Here, you will observe the great silence. It's a profound quiet that lasts from the evening compline service until after the morning prime service. But even outside these hours, unnecessary talk is forbidden in the most sacred parts of the abbey, the church, the refectory where you eat. And, most importantly, the scriptorium, the writing room you hope to one day enter. Some historians today still debate just how absolute this silence was. Was it a constant, year-round vow of total muteness, or were there designated times and places where quiet, necessary conversation was permitted? The truth is likely somewhere in between, varying from one monastic order to another. For you, right now, it feels absolute. To get by, you'll have to learn the language of signs. This isn't just a quaint custom. It's a complex and officially codified system of communication. You watch two monks pass each other in the cloister. One wants to know if there is bread. He makes a circle with his thumb and forefinger and then gestures towards his mouth. For a book, you'll learn to mimic the gesture of opening a cover and turning pages. There are hundreds of these signs, a silent vocabulary for everything from fish to wine to signaling that another monk has fallen asleep during a sermon. It's a strange, silent ballet that keeps the abbey running. Standing there before the abbot, you are given the choice. To stay, you must agree to this life. You must muzzle your own voice, not for a day or a week, but for as long as you reside within these walls. You must embrace the quiet, let it seep into your bones until the thought of shouting feels alien. It's a vow as solemn as any other you will take. You look out the narrow window at the simple, orderly garden. You think of the noisy, messy world you left behind. You take a deep breath, the last one filled with the freedom of speech, and you nod. The decision is made. The great silence of your new life has just begun. The days that follow your silent vow are a blur of humble, back-breaking labor. You are not yet a scholar, a preserver of knowledge. You are the newest, lowest-ranking member of this silent community, and your hands must prove their worth through toil, not art. You weed the herb garden, your fingers numb from the cold, damp earth. You scrub flagstone floors with stiff, bristled brushes until your shoulders ache. You help in the kitchens, peeling endless piles of root vegetables with a small, dull knife. Through it all, the silence is your constant companion. You learn the rhythms of the abbey not through speech, but through the ringing of bells that call you to prayer, to meals, to work, and finally to sleep. You communicate with gestures, a silent nod of understanding, a shared glance of exhaustion with another novice. You are being tested. Your patience, your humility, your ability to simply be without the constant need for expression are all under scrutiny. Then, one morning, after the brief meal that breaks your fast, the monk in charge of the novices, a stern but not unkind man named Brother Paulus, taps you on the shoulder. He doesn't gesture towards the gardens or the kitchens. Instead, he points towards a heavy, oak door at the end of a quiet, sunlit corridor. You've walked past this door 100 times. It is always closed. No sound ever escapes it. You know, instinctively, that this is the door to the scriptorium. Your heart gives a little flutter, a nervous energy that feels loud in the stillness. This is it, the real reason you came here. Brother Paulus leads you to the door and pushes it open. The hinges move with a low, respectful groan, as if they too are afraid to make too much noise. You step across the threshold, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's a scent unlike any other, a rich, complex perfume of concentration. It smells of dry parchment which has a faint, musky, almost animal scent to it. It smells of the sharp, metallic tang of ink, of beeswax used for polishing, and the clean, woody fragrance of the timber-framed room. It is the smell of old knowledge, of countless hours of focused human effort, all captured in one space. The room is long and narrow with a high, vaulted ceiling. The wall opposite the door is almost entirely made of large, clear glass windows, a stunning and expensive feature for this era. Light floods the room, illuminating the air and making dust motes dance in golden shafts. This, you will learn, is by design. The scriptorium is almost always built on the south side of the monastery to capture the maximum amount of daylight. You see, there are no candles or oil lamps allowed in here. The risk of a stray spark setting fire to decades, or even centuries of irreplaceable work is far too great. The work of a scribe is therefore governed by the sun. Your workday begins when the light is strong enough to see and ends when it fades. Along the length of the room are several tall, slanted writing desks. At each one sits a monk, his back slightly stooped, his head bent in concentration. They are utterly still, like figures in a painting. They don't look up as you enter. Their entire world is the page in front of them. The silence in here is even deeper, more profound than in the rest of the abbey. But it is not an empty silence. If you hold your breath and listen, you can hear it, the faint, rhythmic scratch, scratch of a quill moving across parchment. It's a dry, soft sound, like mice scurrying behind a wall. You hear the quiet rustle of a page being turned, the soft thump of a book being closed, a distant muffled cough. These are the only sounds permitted. This is the soundtrack to the preservation of Western civilization. The man in charge of this sacred space is the armorius. He is the abbey's librarian, quartermaster of knowledge, and the undisputed master of the scriptorium. He is responsible for everything, commissioning new books, acquiring texts from other monasteries, and managing all the precious supplies, the parchment, the pigments, the inks, and the tools. He looks up at you, his eyes sharp and assessing. He is the gatekeeper, and you must earn his approval. Historians still debate the exact layout of these rooms, while you stand in a large communal hall, a kind of knowledge factory. It's believed that in some monasteries the scriptorium wasn't a room at all. Instead, it was a series of small, individual wooden cubicles, or carrels, set into the cloister walls, where monks would work in greater isolation. The experience of working shoulder to shoulder, in a shared, silent rhythm, would be very different from the solitary confinement of a carrel. Brother Paulus leads you to an empty stool in the corner, away from the main desks. He gestures for you to sit, and then he leaves you. The armarius gives you a single, stern nod as if to say, "Do not move. Do not make a sound. Just watch. Your apprenticeship has begun. You are not here to write, not yet. You are here to absorb the atmosphere, to understand the gravity of the work, to let the silence and the scratching sounds seep into your soul. You sit on the hard wooden stool, fold your hands in your lap, and for the first time, you truly listen to the quiet craft of God. 4 days. You do nothing but sit and watch. The hard wooden stool becomes your entire world. You learn the particular way the light shifts across the room as the sun makes its arc through the sky. You learn the individual postures of the monks at their desks. Brother Michael's slight lean to the left, Brother Thomas' habit of pausing to stare out the window for a moment before resuming his work. You learn the subtle symphony of sounds, the dry scrape of a quill on ink, the wetter, smoother glide of one freshly dipped, the soft pouf as a monk blows on a newly written line to speed its drying. You are a ghost in the machine, a silent apprentice taking in every detail. You feel a growing, gnawing impatience, a desire to do something, but you suppress it. Patience is the first lesson of the scriptorium. Then, one afternoon, when the sun is warm on the floorboards, the armarius rises from his own desk and walks towards you. Your back straightens instantly. He moves without a sound, his felted slippers making no noise on the stone. He beckons you with a slight curl of his index finger. You rise, your knees stiff, and follow him to a heavy wooden chest in the corner of the room. He lifts the lid, and inside, nestled on a clean linen cloth, is a bundle of what look like giant, pristine white feathers. They are long, elegant, and perfectly clean. He lifts the bundle out and places it on a nearby table, spreading the feathers out for you to see. Then he looks at you and points to the feathers, then points back at you. The instruction is clear even in the silence. Choose one. This is it, your first real task. A wave of nervous energy washes over you. This feels more important than scrubbing floors or weeding gardens. This is the first step towards the real work. Your hand hesitates over the pile. They are goose feathers, you realize, the primary flight feathers of a large bird. They feel impossibly light but surprisingly strong in your hand. The shaft, the calamus, is thick and hollow, and the vein, the feathery part, is smooth and neatly aligned. You are choosing your instrument, the tool that will become an extension of your hand, your mind, your will. How do you choose? What makes one feather better than another? You pick one up at random. It feels awkward in your hand, curving inwards, the feathery vein brushing against your knuckles. The armarius notices. He gently takes it from you and puts it back. Then he picks up another feather and places it in your right hand. This one curves the other way, arching gently away from your hand, your line of sight completely clear. He turns his own hand over, mimicking the shape of a bird's wings, and points to his left side. The message is brilliant in its simplicity. The best quills for a right-handed writer come from the 5 or 6 outermost feathers of the left wing of the goose. Their natural curvature fits the hand perfectly. The feathers from the right wing are for the left-handed scribe, a role you have yet to see filled here. It is a small piece of ergonomic wisdom, perfected over centuries of trial and error. Now you know what to look for. You carefully separate the left wing feathers from the right. You examine them closely, your focus narrowing. You are looking for a flawless shaft with a good, thick, round barrel at its base. It must be free of cracks or imperfections. The tip must be strong. You run your finger along the hollow tube, feeling for any weakness. Some historians debate just how picky scribes could be. In a well-funded abbey, could you demand only the finest one quills for a prestigious project, their larger size and supposed durability making them a luxury item? Or was the humble goose feather the great equalizer? Its quality dependent not on the bird but on the skill of the man who would eventually cut it. The answer likely lies in the abbey's budget. For you today, the goose is your only option, and you must choose the best of them. You see a few other types of feathers in the chest, smaller, darker ones from crows, perhaps used for exceptionally fine lines or corrections, But those are not for you. Not yet. Your world is the goose. You find one that feels right. It has a robust, clean barrel about the width of your little finger, and the vein is long and full. It has a pleasing weight and balance. It feels potential. You tentatively pick it up and hold it out for the armorius to inspect. This is your test. Have you understood the silent lesson? He takes the feather from you and holds it up to the light of the large window. He turns it over slowly, his sharp eyes scanning its entire length. He pinpoints the spot where the translucent, hollow barrel gives way to the opaque pith inside. He rubs the tip between his thumb and forefinger, feeling its strength. The seconds stretch into an eternity. The only sound in the room is the distant, rhythmic scratching of the other monks, oblivious to your private drama. Finally, he looks at you, and he nods. A single, slow, deliberate nod of approval. He hands the feather back to you. The relief is so profound it almost makes you dizzy. You have passed. He gestures for you to return to your stool. You walk back across the room, clutching the feather in your hand as if it were a holy relic. Use it, placing it carefully on the desk before you. It is no longer just a feather. It has been chosen. It is yours. For the rest of the day, you do not take your eyes off it. You pick it up, feel its balance, practice holding it as you've seen the others do. You are not yet a scribe, but you are no longer just an observer. You have your tool, or at least the raw material for one. The next step will be to give it a voice. You clutch your chosen feather for what feels like an eternity, but is probably only another day. You sit on your stool absorbing the quiet diligence of the room. Just as your mind begins to wander, wondering if you'll simply be an observer forever, the armorius approaches once more. In his hand he holds a small object that glints in the sunlight. It's a knife. He lays it on the small, empty desk beside your stool. It's not a weapon nor a tool for eating. It is small, elegant, and looks incredibly sharp. The handle is made of polished bone, smooth and cool to the touch. This small blade is the scribe's most personal tool. It's a penknife, a name that has survived for 1,000 years, long after its original purpose has been forgotten by most. Its job is not to open letters, but to create and maintain the very instrument of writing itself. He also brings a small, shallow tray filled with fine, pale sand, which he places over a metal stand with a single, small charcoal brazier beneath it. A faint heat begins to shimmer above the sand. This is where the magic, and a bit of weird science, begins. The armorius takes your pristine feather. Before you can even think about cutting it, he tells you with a gesture, it must be hardened. He plunges the barrel of the quill, the hollow end, deep into the hot sand. You hear a faint sizzle and a strange, slightly acrid smell, like burnt hair, but much fainter, rises into the air. This process is called curing or tempering. It drives the natural oils and moisture out of the keratin, making the shaft harder and more brittle. This allows for a sharper, cleaner, cut and a more durable point. This is one of those strange little details, a piece of forgotten chemistry. Some scribes, you learn later, would use the hot ashes from a monastery stove, a technique that had to be mastered lest you simply char your precious quill to a blackened crisp. After a few moments, he pulls the feather from the sand. The translucent barrel is now slightly opaque and feels harder, more glass-like. Now, the shaping can begin. He gestures for you to watch his hands closely. His movements are economical and precise. First, using the sharp penknife, he strips away the lower third of the vein, the soft, feathery part, leaving the shaft bare. This gives a clean, unimpeded place to grip the quill. Then comes the first real cut. He lays the tip of the quill on a small block of hardwood. With a single, decisive movement, he slices off the very end of the barrel at a steep, oblique angle. It makes a crisp, satisfying snap. A new, clean, elliptical opening now stares up at you, revealing the hollow core of the feather. This is the basic shape of your nib. His hand is so steady, the cut so perfect, that it seems effortless. You know it is not. Next, and this is the most critical step, he turns the nib over. He places the very point of his knife precisely in the center of the rounded tip and applies a tiny amount of downward pressure. He makes a small, vertical slit, barely a few millimeters long, extending up from the point. This is the ink channel. The entire technology of writing for 1,000 years depends on this tiny, fragile channel. It is through this slit that capillary action will draw the ink from the reservoir of the nib down to the page. If this slit is off-center or if it cracks, the quill is ruined. Finally, he makes 2 smaller, careful cuts, one on each side of the central slit, to shape the shoulders and create the final point. The width of this point will determine the very character of your handwriting. A broad, square-cut nib is for the bold, thickened thin strokes of the formal Gothic black letter you see in the Grand Bibles. A sharper, more pointed nib is for quicker, more flowing scripts. Historians today still argue about the daily practices of a scribe. Did a monk have a whole collection of quills, each cut for a different purpose, one for large letters, one for small, one for red ink, one for black? Or was he a master of maintenance, constantly rate-rimming and race-shaping a single, favorite quill throughout the day to meet the demands of the page? Looking at the armory you assist single, perfect knife, you suspect the latter. He inspects his work, holding the newly formed nib up to the light, then lays the finished quill and the knife in front of you. The silent instruction is clear now. He pushes a second, less perfect feather towards you. Your turn to practice. Your hand trembles as you pick up the penknife. It feels both heavy and dangerous. You try to mimic his movements. You heat the new feather in the sand, the smell of hot keratin filling your little corner of the room. You strip the vein. You take a deep breath and make the first, oblique cut. It's not as clean as his. The edge is slightly ragged. You press on. You try to make the central slit, but your hand shakes, and the cut goes slightly askew. The armarius watches you, his face impassive. He doesn't interfere. He lets you fail. You try again with another feather, and then another. Your corner of the room is slowly filling with the discarded, mangled remains of your attempts. But with each one, you learn something. The right pressure, the right angle. Finally, you produce a cut that is acceptable. It's not perfect. The shoulders are a little uneven, and the point is not quite as sharp as his, but it has a slit, and it has cracked. You hold it up, your heart pounding. The armarius picks it up, examines it for a moment, and gives a short, almost imperceptible nod. It is a passing gray. He takes your own personal, chosen feather, the good one, and with 2 swift, expert motions, he corrects the slight unevenance of your work, perfecting the nib. He hands it back to you. It is finally complete. It is no longer a feather. It is a pen. Use it there, holding it, feeling the perfect balance, the sharp, clean point resting against your fingertip. You have created your voice, and soon you will learn how to make it sing. You now possess a pen. It sits on your small desk, a testament to your first successful foray into the craft. You spend hours just holding it, practicing the angle, the grip, feeling its delicate balance. It feels potent, like a key to a locked door. But a key is useless without a lock. A pen is just a feather without something to write on. As if reading your thoughts, the armarius approaches your station, his felt slippers making no sound on the stone floor. This time, he carries no tools. He carries a single large rectangular sheet. He lays it down in front of you with a reverence that surprises you. It is the most beautiful surface you have ever seen. It's not paper. You've seen the rough, flimsy paper used for merchants' accounts. This is something else entirely. It is a soft, creamy white, with a weight and substance to it that speaks of permanence. You run a tentative finger over its surface. It is impossibly smooth, like polished ivory, but with a subtle warmth and flexibility that stone could never have. As you lift a corner, it makes a soft, deep rustle, a sound that seems to absorb the light in the room. This he communicates with a slow, deliberate gesture as parchment. This is what you will write on, and its value he makes clear is immense. A single sheet like this might represent a full day's wages for a skilled laborer. An entire book. Its value could rival that of a small farm. Then, with a series of stark, simple gestures, he begins to tell you its story. It is a story that does not begin in a craftsman's workshop, but in a field. He points out the window towards the distant pastures, and then mimics the shape of a sheep with his hands, then a calf. A cold realization dawns on you. This pristine, beautiful, almost holy object in front of you began its life as the skin of an animal. The Armarius spares you no detail in his silent explanation. He wants you to understand the labor, the filth, and the transformation that goes into every single sheet. The process begins with the raw hide, delivered from the abbey's butcher or a nearby farm, still bearing the grime of the animal's life. First, it is washed in a running stream to remove the worst of the dirt and blood. Then comes the part you can almost smell just from his description, the liming. The skin is submerged for days, sometimes weeks, in a vat of caustic, pungent lime and water. The foul-smelling solution works to loosen the hair and break down the fats. The air around the liming pits, he signifies with a wrinkle of his nose, is not pleasant. When the hide is slimy and swollen, it's pulled from the pit and draped over a large, curved wooden beam. This is where the real physical work begins. Using a long, curved knife with a blunt edge, a monk or a hired laborer must scrape the hide clean. With long, firm strokes, he scrapes away every last bit of hair from one side. Then he flips it over and scrapes away the residual flesh and fat from the other. It is exhausting, repetitive, and smelly work. What happens next is the secret to its transformation from a simple hide into a writing surface. The scraped and washed skin is then laced into a large circular or rectangular wooden frame. It's stretched and stretched again, pulled taut as a drumhead. As the skin dries under this immense tension, its entire collagen structure relents, changing it from pliable leather into stiff, opaque parchment. While it's drying, it is scraped again, this time with a special crescent-shaped knife called a lunellum. The monk works his way across the entire surface, shaving it thinner and thinner, working out any bumps or imperfections until it achieves a uniform, smooth finish. The sound of the lunellum on the stretched skin, you imagine, must be a high, resonant, almost musical scraping. Finally, the finished sheet is cut from the frame. The surface is often dusted with powdered pumice or chalk and polished with a smooth stone, making it even more flawless and ready to accept ink. He picks up the sheet in front of you and shows you its two distinct sides. One is slightly whiter, softer. This is the flesh side, the inside of the skin. The other side is a touch darker, a creamier yellow, and feels infinitesimally tougher. This is the hair side. A good scribe, his gesture tells you, must always be aware of the difference, as they can absorb ink in subtly different ways. Historians today still argue about the finer points of this process. Was there a hierarchy of skins with the ultra-fine, almost translucent vellum, made from the skin of newborn or even stillborn calves, reserved only for the most luxurious gospel books? Did different monastic orders have their own secret additives for the liming pits, jealously guarded recipes that produced whiter, smoother parchment? The truth is, the craft varied from region to region, abbey to abbey, 1,000 local traditions now mostly lost to time. You look down at the single sheet of parchment. It is no longer just a blank page. It is a monument of labor. You see the field, the animal, the lime pit, the scraping knife, the stretching frame. You understand its cost not just in coin, but in sweat and effort. The Armarius places it squarely on your desk, alongside your quill. The message is unspoken but clear. Do not waste it. Now you have a pen and you have parchment. You feel an almost unbearable urge to bring them together, to make a mark, to write your name, to draw a simple line. But the Armarius, a master of methodical patience, knows that a performance cannot begin until all the players are assembled. The final essential element is still missing, the ink. He beckons you to follow him not to a chest or a cupboard, but to a small, secluded corner of the scriptorium where a faint, sharp, almost medicinal smell hangs in the air. Here on a stone slab are the raw ingredients for the lifeblood of the written word. He shows you a small wooden bowl filled with what looked like lumpy, brownish balls. They are hard and woody, about the size of a large marble, with little holes dotting their surfaces. He makes a gesture towards the oak trees visible through the window. These, he communicates, are oak galls or oak apples. You've seen them before on walks, strange growths on the twigs of oak trees, but you never knew their purpose. He explains with a few clever hand signs that a tiny wasp lays its egg in the tender bark of the oak. The tree, in reaction to the alien law of growing inside it, forms this hard, protective growth around it. It's a kind of tree scar, a woody cocoon, and it is rich in a chemical called tannic acid. This is the heart of your ink. Next, he points to a small ceramic jar containing a coarse, greenish-brown crystalline powder. It looks like rough salt that has gone bad. He makes a sign for a blacksmith's hammer striking iron. This is iron sulfate, also known as copperas or vitriol. It's a mineral salt, a byproduct of certain types of mining or metalwork. When mixed with the tannic acid from the oak galls, a chemical reaction occurs. The result is a deep, purplish-black liquid iron gall ink. This will be the ink of your world, the standard recipe for over 1,000 years. The Armarius begins the process, and you watch mesmerized. First, he takes a handful of the oak galls and places them on a small stone block. Using a wooden mallet, he crushes them into a coarse powder. The dry, woody smell intensifies. He scrapes the powder into a large earthenware jar. Then he adds water, or rather, something that looks like water. He makes the sign for wine, then lets it go sour with a grimace. H.E.S. using stale wine or maybe even beer. The alcohol acts as a solvent and a preservative, helping to extract the tannins more effectively than plain water. He lets the mixture steep for a few days, swirling it occasionally. As the tannic acid leaches out of the gall powder, the liquid turns a pale tea-like brown. Then, he adds the greenish crystals of iron sulfate. The moment they dissolve, the magic happens. The pale brown liquid instantly darkens, turning a deep, rich black right before your eyes. It feels like alchemy, but the ink is not yet complete. If you were to use it now, the black pigment would just sit on the surface of the parchment and flake off once it dried. It needs a binder, a glue. He shows you a small pot containing translucent, amber-colored pebbles. These are lumps of gum arabic, the hardened sap of the acacia tree, imported all the way from the Middle East. It is a costly ingredient. He gently heats the gum in a little water until it dissolves into a thick, sticky syrup. He then pours the syrup into the black liquid and stirs it all together. This binder will hold the pigment particles in suspension and bind them to the surface of the parchment, ensuring permanence. The resulting ink is a marvel of medieval chemistry, but it's a living, often cantankerous substance. He shows you an old manuscript page where the ink has faded to a rusty brown. This is a common fate of iron gall ink over centuries as it oxidizes. Then he shows you another page where the ink has literally eaten through the parchment, leaving lace-like holes where the letters used to be. This happens when the ink is made with too much acid. Creating a perfectly balanced, stable ink is a true art form. Historians are still uncovering the secrets of these inks. Was rainwater, being purer, a preferred ingredient to stream water? Did some scribes add a touch of honey to make the ink flow smoother, or a drop of clove oil to prevent mold from growing in the pot? These small local variations are the subject of ongoing scholarly research. Yuri also shown another, simpler ink, carbon black. It's made from the soot of a candle or an oil lamp, collected on a cool metal plate and then mixed with the same gum Arabic binder. The result is a deep, true black that doesn't fade or eat the page, but it sits on the surface and can be more easily smudged or scraped away. For important works, iron gall is the standard. Finally, the Armarius decants a small amount of the fresh, dark ink into a tidy little ink quill. In the early days, these were simple hollowed-out horns from a cow or goat, wide at the bottom so they wouldn't tip over easily. He hands one to you. It's cool to the touch and still has the faint, earthy smell of the horn it was made from. He places it on your desk, next to your quill and your sheet of parchment. Now, all the elements are in place. The long period of watching, of preparing, of learning the origin story of your tools is over. The moment is finally here. You look at the pristine page, the sharp point of your quill, the small dark pool of ink waiting in its horn. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. The next step is yours and yours alone. The weight of the moment feels immense. The quill in your hand feels heavier than it did before. The pristine sheet of parchment on your desk seems to mock you with its blankness, its sheer, expensive potential. The Armarius stands beside you, a silent, imposing statue of expectation. You look at the other monks, their heads bowed, their quills dancing in a silent, rhythmic ballet. You're about to join the dance, and you are terrified you will trip on the first step. The Armarius points to the parchment. Then he picks up a tool you haven't seen before. It looks like a small, blunt stylus, but instead of being sharp, its tip is made of a soft, silvery gray metal. He draws it gently across the surface of the parchment. It leaves behind a faint, shimmering gray line, almost invisible unless the light catches it just right. This, he explains with a gesture, is a lead point or plummet. It's not a pencil as we would know it. There's no wood casing, just a small stick of soft lead alloy. It doesn't deposit graphite onto the page, but rather scores it slightly, leaving a faint metallic trace that can be easily erased with a crust of bread. This is for planning, for marking, for measuring. He then introduces you to the concept of ruling the page. You can't just start writing. Anarchy on the page is an offense to God and to the reader. The text must be perfectly aligned, a neat, orderly book. He takes a T-square and a compass, tools you might associate with a carpenter or a mason, and with the lead point, he begins to measure and mark the borders of the writing block. He marks the top, bottom, left, and right margins, creating a perfect rectangle of writing space in the center of the page. But it doesn't stop there. Now you need lines for the letters to sit on. Putting the lead point aside, he takes up another tool, a simple AWL or a sharpened bone stylus. Placing a ruler across the writing block, he presses down firmly and pulls the blunt point of the stylus across the parchment. It doesn't leave a mark of color. Instead, it creates a physical groove, a furrow pressed into the surface of the page. He moves the ruler down a precise, measured distance and draws another line, and another, until the entire writing block is filled with faint, horizontal grooves. This is dry point ruling. He turns the sheet over. You can see and feel the raised ridges on the other side from the pressure of the stylus. This creates a fascinating debate among historians and paleographers who study ancient manuscripts. Which side do you write on first? The side with the furrows, where your quill can naturally settle into the groove, or the side with the ridges, which presents its own unique challenge? There's no single answer. Different scriptoria had different traditions. Next, he adds vertical lines. 2 lines very close together on the left margin, and 2 on the right, to ensure the beginning and end of each line of text are perfectly justified. This creates that neat, column-like appearance you see in finished manuscripts. The result is a page covered in a complex, almost invisible web of lines. It's a hidden skeleton, a secret architecture that will support the text and ensure its harmony and legibility. It's an act of pure geometry and forethought, all done before a single drop of ink is used. They are Marius gestures for you to take over on a practice sheet of parchment, a less perfect piece, perhaps with a small hole or a discolored patch. Saved for this very purpose, you pick up the lead point. It feels clumsy in your hand. Your first margin is crooked. You take the T-square, your hand sweating slightly, and try to draw a straight line. It wobbles. You press too hard with the stylus and almost tear the parchment. The other monks don't look up, but you feel they're perfect, silent work judging you. The Armarius is patient. He corrects your grip, adjusts the angle of the ruler, shows you how to apply steady, even pressure. Slowly, painfully, you begin to get the hang of it. You create a grid. It's not as perfect as his. Your lines are not all perfectly parallel, but it is a grid. You have created order out of blankness. You have prepared the canvas. This ruling process is a fascinating and often overlooked part of the scribe's craft. Some of the most luxurious manuscripts have incredibly complex rulings, with different spacing for the main text, for commentaries in the margins, and for titles or headings. Some later medieval scribes would even use a device called a rake, a comb-like tool that could be used to draw multiple parallel lines at once, a small innovation to speed up this laborious but essential process. It's another one of those hidden crafts, the invisible foundation upon which the beautiful art of calligraphy is built. The precision of the final page is not magic. It is pure, painstaking measurement. Having completed your first clumsy grid, you look to the Armarius for the next instruction. You expect him to finally let you dip your quill in the ink. Instead, he simply nods at your work, then points to the stylus and the practice sheet again. The silent command is unmistakable. Do it again, and again, and again. Before you can be trusted with the holy permanence of ink, You must first master the silent, invisible craft of the line. The dance must be learned one step at a time, and you have only just begun to understand the intricate geometry of the floor. You spend days, maybe even weeks, in a state of purgatory ruling lines. You graduate from clumsy practice sheets to real, precious parchment, but only to prepare it for the senior monks. You create grids, hundreds of them, your hands learning the precise pressure needed for the stylus, your eyes learning to measure the hair's breadth accuracy required. You become a master of the invisible skeleton. And just when you think that this is your permanent role, that you are the monk who prepares the canvas but never paints, the armorius makes a change. One morning he doesn't hand you a stylus and a ruler. He takes the perfectly ruled sheet you just finished, positions it squarely on your desk, and places your inkhorn beside it. He doesn't make a grand gesture. He just looks at you, then at the quill, then at the ink. The time has come. All the preparation, all the waiting has led to this single, terrifying moment. Your heart feels like a trapped bird beating against your ribs. Your mouth is dry. You pick up your quill, the one you so carefully chosen shaped. Your hand is slick with sweat. Then you wipe it on your woolen tunic. This is not practice. The ink is permanent. The parchment is expensive. A mistake now cannot be easily undone. You look at the senior monks. Their movements are so fluid, so economical. Dip, write a few words, pause, dip again. It looks as effortless as breathing. For you, it feels like preparing to jump off a cliff. You unstopper the inkhorn. The sharp metallic smell of the iron gall ink fills your nostrils. You dip the tip of your quill into the dark liquid. You are supposed to dip it just enough to fill the tiny reservoir of the nib, but not so much that it will blob on the page. How much is that? No one has told you. You pull the quill out. A fat drop of black ink hangs menacingly from the tip. Panic seizes you. You quickly wipe it on the rim of the inkhorn, but now you've wiped too much off. Is there any ink left in the nib at all? The armorius watches you, his expression unreadable. He doesn't help. This is your trial by fire, or rather by ink. You take a deep breath to steady your hand. You position the nib at the top of the page, on the first ruled line within the carefully marked left margin. You are supposed to be copying a text, a simple psalm from a master copy propped up in front of you. The first letter is a simple B, but as you press the quill to the page, your hand trembles. Instead of a clean, sharp line, you produce a jagged, shaky stroke. The ink, starved from your overzealous wipe, is pale and gray instead of black. It looks pathetic, a single, ugly letter on a sea of pristine parchment. You stop, horrified. Your first mark, by failure. You want to scratch it out, crumple the whole sheet up and throw it away, to run from the room. But you are a monk in a silent scriptorium, and you are frozen in your shame. The armorius steps forward. He doesn't look angry. He simply points to the shaky letter with the tip of his finger. Then he picks up your hand, the one holding the quill. He adjusts your grip, turning your knuckles slightly outwards, forcing your fingers to relax. He shows you how to hold the quill at a constant 45-degree angle to the page, the key to achieving the thick and thin strokes of the Gothic script. He guides your hand through the motion of the letter B in the air, a silent dance of muscle memory. Then he releases you. He points to the next space on the page. The silent instruction is clear. Try again. You dip your quill again. This time, you try to judge the amount of ink correctly. You touch the point to the page, focusing on the angle, the pressure, the slow, deliberate pull of the downward stroke and the sharp, clean lift at the end. A letter appears. It is still a little shaky, but it is black. It is recognizable. It is better. You continue, letter by letter, word by word. You complete the first word, beatus. Your letters are clumsy, uneven. They look like a child's scrawl next to the elegant, confident script of the master copy. The spacing between them is irregular. One leans slightly to the left. A T is a little too tall, but it is a word. You have taken thoughts, encoded in symbols, and given them a physical form with ink and feather and skin. It's a moment that every scribe in history has had to face. That first, terrifying contact between ink and page. There's a strange intimacy to it. The scribe's own anxieties, his level of confidence, the very rhythm of his breathing can be seen in the lines he produces. Historians who study these manuscripts, paleographers, are like detectives. They can recognize the hand of a particular scribe, identify his habits, his quirks, even spot the exact point in a manuscript where one scribe grew tired and another took over. The script is a fingerprint of the soul. As you finish the first line, a wave of profound relief washes over you. It's not perfect, not even good, but it is done. You have faced the blank page and you have not broken. You look up at the Armarius. He examines your wobbly line of text. He looks at your first pathetic gray letter, and then at the last, slightly more confident one. He places a hand on your shoulder, a rare gesture of contact, and then he leaves you to your work. The lesson is simple. The only way to learn is to do. The only way to conquer the fear is to make the next mark. You dip your quill in the ink and begin the second line. The days melt into a quiet, focused rhythm. Your life narrows to the space between the inkward and the parchment, to the feel of the quill in your hand and the steady, guiding pressure of the ruled lines. The outside world ceases to exist. The ringing of the bells for prayer is no longer an interruption, but a gentle tide that pulls you from your work and then, just as gently, returns you to it. You are no longer the terrified novice. You are becoming a scribe. Your day is a ritual of repetition. You arrive in the scriptorium as the morning light first slants through the high windows. You take your seat at your designated desk. You check the nib of your quill, perhaps giving it a tiny, expert trim with your penknife to ensure its sharpness. You unstop your ink and you begin. You are copying the Psalms, a text you know by heart from the endless cycle of chanted prayer. This is a blessing. It frees your mind from the burden of understanding the words, allowing you to focus entirely on their form. Each letter is a small, controlled dance. For the Gothic script you're learning, a P is not a single, looping stroke. It's a sequence of separate, deliberate movements. A strong vertical downstroke, the meaning. A lift of the quill. A second, shorter stroke to form the bowl. Another lift. The perfection lies not in speed, but in precision and consistency. Your hand, once shaky and uncertain, begins to learn the muscle memory. Your grip is relaxed but firm. The 45-degree angle of the nib becomes second nature. The primary sound of your existence is the gentle, hypnotic scratch, scratch of your quill. It's a sound that gets inside your head, a mantra of focused labor. You learn to read its language. A smooth, gliding sound means the ink is flowing perfectly. A dry, rasping scrape tells you it's time to dip again. A slight catch or snag means there's a tiny imperfection on the surface of the parchment, or perhaps your nib is becoming dull. The scratching is your constant companion, the audible measure of your progress. You work in shared silence with the other monks, but each of you is locked in his own private world, his own personal rhythm of scratching. You learn the subtle economies of the script. To save space on the breathtakingly expensive parchment, you use abbreviations. A light over a letter might indicate a missing M or N. Special symbols are used for common word endings like or more here. This is a complex shorthand, a secret code for the initiated, and mastering it is as important as mastering the letter forms themselves. Historians still puzzle over some unique abbreviations found only in a single manuscript, the scribe's personal shortcut, the meaning of which is now lost to time. The work is physically demanding in a way you never expected. Use it for hours on a hard, backless stool leaning forward over the slanted desk. A dull ache begins to establish a permanent residence between your shoulder blades. Your eyes, straining to see the fine lines in the shifting daylight, often burn in water by the end of the day. You learn to work with your head close to the page, your body curled into a question mark of concentration. You are slowly, letter by letter, shaping your own body into the posture of a scribe. There are moments of pure, unadulterated flow, moments when your mind empties of everything but the shapes of the letters. The barrier between your brain, your hand, and the page seems to dissolve. The letters flow from the quill not as individual marks, but as a seamless river of text. The scratching of the nib is the only thing in the universe. In these moments, you feel a profound sense of peace, a connection to the sacred text you are transcribing. You are not merely copying words, you are a conduit, a vessel through which God's word is made manifest. It is a state of grace, a form of active prayer. But these moments are fleeting. More often, the work is a grind. Your mind wanders. You think about the meager lunch you will eat. You wonder what season it is outside the tall windows. You become acutely aware of the ache in your back. Your concentration breaks, and you make a mistake. The rhythm is shattered, and you are brought crashing back to the reality of your imperfect human self. One afternoon, lost in the monotonous repetition of a psalm, you find your mind drifting so completely that you copy a full line of text twice. You stare at the duplicated words in horror. The beautiful, orderly bulk of your text is now marred by your carelessness. The rhythm is broken, the spell is shattered, and now you must deal with the consequences. The scratching stops. The silence in your corner of the room suddenly feels heavy and accusatory. You stare at the duplicated line of text, a glaring monument to your inattention. Your first instinct is panic, a hot flush of shame that prickles your skin. You have wasted time, you have wasted ink, and worst of all, you have wasted a precious portion of this immaculate sheet of parchment. You look around, but of course, no one has noticed. Each monk is locked in his own silent battle with his own page. This is your mistake to solve. It is in moments like these that the old monks start to whisper. In hushed tones during a rare times conversation is permitted about Titivilus. He is the patron demon of scribes, a mischievous and sometimes malevolent figure from the underworld. His sole job, they say, is to cause errors in the scriptorium. He is the one who makes your hand tremble, who makes your eyes skip a line, who whispers distracting thoughts into your ear to break your concentration. Titivilus, the legend goes, collects all the scribal errors, the duplicated words, the omitted letters, the careless misspellings in a large sack. On Judgment Day, he will present this sack to the devil, and each error will be read aloud to testify against the lazy monk who committed it. This story, you realize, is a brilliant piece of medieval psychology. It's a way to personify the universal human tendency to make mistakes. Blaming a mischievous demon is, perhaps, a gentle way to cope with the frustration of your own imperfection than simply blaming yourself. It's a shared joke, a coping mechanism for a high-stakes job where perfection is the goal but is rarely attainable. The figure of Titivilus is a fascinating piece of folklore, a weirdly specific demon for a weirdly specific job. Some scholars believe he was invented by a preacher to keep his scribes on their toes, a cautionary tale that took on a life of its own and became an inside joke for copyists across Europe for centuries. Knowing about Titivilus doesn't solve your immediate problem, but it does make you feel a little less alone in your failure. You are one in a long line of scribes who have been visited by this little demon. Now, you must learn the art of exercising his work from your page. You look to Brother Michael, a senior scribe who sits 2 desks away. You've seen him deal with mistakes before. He doesn't panic. He works with a calm, methodical precision. You watch him closely, trying to learn the procedure. You cannot simply cross out the word. That would be an ugly scar on the face of the page, an admission of defeat. The goal is not just to correct the text, but to erase the error as if it never happened. The technique requires a specific tool. You reach for your trusty penknife, the one you use to sharpen your quill. But this is not the right instrument. For corrections, a different blade is needed. You signal to the armarias, your heart sinking a little at having to admit your mistake. You point to the duplicated line. He looks at it, his face betraying no emotion. He simply nods, goes to his supply chest, and returns with a small, specialized knife. This knife has a curved, almost rounded blade like a miniature scythe. It is designed not for cutting, but for scraping. He hands it to you. The technique he demonstrates on a scrap piece of parchment is all about delicate pressure. You must hold the curved blade almost parallel to the surface of the page and gently, patiently scrape away the offending letters. The goal is to remove the top layer of the parchment, the one holding the ink, without digging a hole or creating a rough, fuzzy patch. It's a painstaking process, a form of microsurgery on the page. Your hand trembles as you touch the scraping knife to your own mistake. The ink, having soaked into the fibers of the animal skin, is stubborn. You scrape. Tiny flakes of dried ink and parchment dust accumulate under your blade. You scrape again, a little harder. The black letters begin to fade, replaced by a slightly abraded, whitish patch. You have to be careful. Scrape too much, and you will create a thin spot that will cause the ink of the corrected text to bleed through. Scraped a little, and a faint ghost of the old letter will remain. After several long, nerve-wracking minutes, the duplicated line is gone. In its place is a slightly rough, but clean patch of blank parchment. You run your finger over it. It feels different from the surrounding smooth surface, a subtle scar that only you will ever know is there. You have successfully scraped away the evidence of T.D. Villas's visit. Now you must write the correct text in the newly cleared space. This presents its own challenge. The scraped surface is more porous than the original, and it will absorb the ink differently. You have to write with a quicker, lighter touch to prevent the ink from feathering out and creating a fuzzy blob. You dip your quill, take a shaky breath, and carefully write the correct words. The ink sits on the scraped surface differently, a little darker, a little less sharp. But it is legible. The correction is made. You have learned a vital new skill, the art of erasure. It is a skill that speaks volumes about the entire enterprise. In a world before undo buttons on delete keys, fixing a mistake was an art form in itself. It required patience, specialized tools, and a delicate touch. You have learned that an error is not the end of the world. It is simply another part of the process, another quiet craft to be mastered in the silent, rhythmic world of the scriptorium. You feel a small sense of pride. You may have let T.T. Villas win the battle, but you have just won the war. The terror of that first major error eventually fades. It doesn't disappear completely, but it shrinks from a roaring lion in your heart to a nagging, persistent fly. T.T. Villas, the demon of mistakes, is no longer a shocking specter but a tiresome, unwanted colleague who shows up unannounced. You'll be in the middle of a perfect line, deep in the flow of the work, and your hand will jerk just slightly, adding a tail to a letter where none belongs. Or your mind will wander for a split second, and you'll write Deus instead of Dominus. The mistakes become smaller, more frequent, and more infuriating. The hot flush of panic is replaced by a slow, weary sigh of resignation. When it happens, the entire rhythm of your work must change. The steady, forward momentum of creation stops dead. You have to put down your quill. The satisfying scratch is replaced by a heavy silence. Now, you are no longer a creator. You are a surgeon, a repairman. You reach for the tool you are coming to know all too well, the curved scraping knife. You hold it differently than your penknife. The goal isn't a sharp, decisive cut, but a gentle, controlled abrasion. You lean in close, your nose almost touching the page. You hold the blade at a low, almost flat angle, then begin to scrape. The sound is soft, a dry shahud like wind through dead leaves. It's a sound of removal, of undoing. With each pass, you see the black ink begin to thin, turning to a ghostly gray. Tiny particles of dried ink and parchment dust gather at the edge of your blade, a dark powder of your own mistake. You have to be incredibly careful. One clumsy move, one moment of excessive pressure, and the knife will dig in, catching the fibers and creating a fuzzy, irreparable wound on the page. It's a slow, meditative process. You are literally shaving away a layer of the skin, a microscopic stratum of the animal's life and the tanner's work. As the last traces of the ink disappear, you are left with a small, clean patch. You blow away the dark dust and run your finger over the spot. It's no longer smooth like the rest of the page. It has a soft, slightly velvety texture. It is a scar, but the work isn't done. You have erased the mistake, but you have also damaged the surface. This newly exposed layer of parchment is raw and porous. If you were to write on it now, the ink would bleed into the fibers, spreading out like water on a napkin, creating a fuzzy, ugly blotch. The page must be healed before it can be written on again. This is where another strange, secret craft comes into play. From a small leather pouch, you take a pinch of a fine, white powder. This is called pounce. You sprinkle a tiny amount of this powder onto the scraped area. Then, using a smooth, polished stone or a small tuft of clean wool, you gently rub the powder into the surface. The pounce works its way into the roughened fibers of the parchment, filling in the microscopic gaps and effectively resizing the page. It creates a new, non-porous surface that will once again accept the ink with a sharp, clean line. The exact recipe for pounce is one of those details that historians still debate. Was it simple powdered chalk? Some texts suggest powdered cuttlefish bone, a substance that is both slightly abrasive and absorbent. Others mention sandalrock, a pale, glassy resin from a North African tree, which would have been an expensive import, perhaps reserved for only the most important corrections. It's likely that most monasteries had their own house blend, a simple and effective recipe made from whatever was cheap and available. This little pouch of white dust is another testament to the forgotten science of the scriptorium. Once the pounce has been worked in and the excess brushed away, the scar is almost invisible. It's a testament to the resilience of your canvas. Parchment is not like paper. It is tough, forgiving. It can be wounded, but it can also be healed. It allows for a degree of human error that a more fragile material would not. Now, you can finally pick up your quill again. You write the correct letter or word in the prepared space. The ink flows cleanly. The lines are sharp. The repair is complete. To a casual observer, the page might look perfect. But you know the truth. You know that beneath the corrected letter lies a scar, a story of a mistake made and a lesson learned. Every manuscript produced in this room, you realize, is probably filled with these tiny invisible scars. They are not signs of failure. They are the marks of human effort, the proof that the path to creating something beautiful and lasting is paved with small, patient, and persistent corrections. With a final, critical look, you dip your quill and the steady, rhythmic scratching resumes. The rhythm of the scriptorium becomes your life, but your body begins to keep its own separate ledger of the costs. While your mind is lost in the holy words of the Psalms, your physical self starts to register a quiet, creeping protest. The first thing you notice is the ache. It begins as a dull throb in your lower back, a consequence of spending countless hours perched on a hard, backless wooden stool, hunched over your slanted desk. The posture required for this work, a permanent state of slight forward flexion, puts a relentless strain on your spine. By the end of the day, when the bell rings for vespers, you find yourself straightening up with a groan, your back muscles stiffened and knotted. Then there are your eyes. The scriptorium is designed to maximize natural light, but maximum light in the 12th century is a dim, watery thing compared to the effortless brightness of the world you came from. On clear, sunny days, the light is beautiful and sharp, but on the frequent overcast, gloomy days of a northern European winter, the room is filled with a flat, gray light that makes your eyes work twice as hard. You find yourself squinting, leaning closer and closer to the page to distinguish the fine ruled lines and the sharp edges of your own letter forms. By midday, your eyes often feel gritty and tired, as if they are full of fine sand. By the time the light fades in the late afternoon, signaling the end of the workday, they are often red and burning. The other monks, you notice, have their own ways of coping. Brother Thomas, an old man with a back as curved as a longbow, sometimes stands up and stretches, a silent, slow-motion gesture of relief that goes unnoticed by the others. Brother Michael squints constantly, his face a permanent mask of concentration, and you sometimes see him rubbing his temples, trying to ward off a headache. These are the quiet, unrecorded ailments of the professional scribe. The slow accumulation of physical stress is the price of this sacred art. This is the unglamorous reality of the scribe's life that is rarely depicted in the romantic images of monks at work. It was a physically demanding job with its own specific set of occupational hazards. Medical texts of the period, though rare, sometimes mention ailments common to scholars and copyists, complaints of refluxes, vapors, and what we would now call eye strain and repetitive stress injuries. There's a famous, almost comical, complaint written in the margin of one manuscript by an anonymous scribe. The work is heavy, it bends the back, it dims the eyes, it breaks the stomach and the ribs. It's a moment of pure, unfiltered human frustration reaching across 8 centuries. Then there is the cold. The scriptorium, with its large glass windows, is a paradise of light, but a dungeon of cold in the winter. Glass was a poor insulator, and the cavernous stone room was impossible to heat. Remember, open flames were strictly forbidden. So you work in the biting, damp cold, your breath plumbing in front of you. You wear heavy wool tunics and a cowl, but the chill seeps into your bones. Your fingers, the tools of your trade, are the first to suffer. They grow stiff and clumsy, and the ink feels sluggish in the cold. You learn to work quickly after your brief breaks, trying to capture the residual warmth from a brisk walk in the cloister before your fingers turn to ice again. Historians still debate how scribes coped with this. Were there heated stones or small braziers placed just outside the scriptorium door where they could warm their hands? Did they develop special exercises to keep the blood flowing? Or did they simply endure, their output slowing dramatically during the winter months? The truth is likely a combination of all three. For you, the solution is endurance. You curl your fingers into a fist between lines. You rub your hands together. You try to ignore the persistent, numbing cold that makes every precise movement a small act of will. The combination of the posture, the eye strain, the cold, and the sheer monotony of the work creates a unique form of exhaustion. It's not the clean, honest tiredness of a day spent working in the fields. It's a weariness of the mind and the nerves. You start to understand why Edie Villas finds so much work here. When your back aches and your eyes burn, it's easy for your concentration to slip. One afternoon, as the light is beginning to fail, you find yourself staring at the page, the letters blurring together. Your back is a single column of pain and your fingers are numb. You put down your quill, the need to stop overwhelming the need to finish the line. You lean back, closing your burning eyes for just a moment. The gentle scratching from the other desks fades into a background hum. The world narrows to the feeling of your own aching body. You have created a beautiful page of text today, but the cost is written not on the parchment, but in the silent, accumulating debt of your own physical well-being. In the moments when your back aches too much or your eyes can no longer focus on the page, you develop a habit. You ask the armorius for permission to consult one of the older books from the library's collection, claiming the need to check a spelling or a point of grammar. The truth is, you need a break, and your favorite way to take one is to lose yourself in the work of the scribes who came before you. The library is not a separate room for browsing, but a series of heavy wooden chests and locked cupboards within the scriptorium itself. The books are stored flat, to protect their heavy bindings. The armorius hands you a key, a sign of his growing trust in you, and you open a chest that smells of old leather and time. You pull out a heavy volume, a copy of the Gospels from 100, maybe 200 years ago. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, but it's not the perfect, orderly text on the main page that you're looking for. Your eyes are drawn to the edges, to the wide, empty spaces of the margins. It is here in the blank wilderness outside the sacred text that the scribes of the past truly come alive. The margins of a medieval manuscript were a world unto themselves. They were the backstage area, the place for notes, corrections, and, most wonderfully, for personal expression. Here, in the space officially reserved for scholarly glosses and commentaries, you find the secret thoughts and doodles of the men who sat in your very seat all those generations ago. In one book, you find a small, beautifully drawn sketch of a cat in the lower margin. It's not a holy animal, just a common abbey cat, depicted in the act of proudly displaying a mouse it has just caught. It has nothing to do with the adjacent text about the Sermon on the Mount. It's just a little moment of life, a tiny, charming intrusion of the real world into the sacred space of the page. You smile. You know that cat. You see its descendants hunting for mice near the kitchens every day. In another manuscript, a heavy commentary on the works of St. Augustine, you find something even more personal. Scrawled in the very bottom margin, in a hurried, spittery script completely different from the formal text of the book, is a sentence written in Old Irish, a language you barely understand. The armorius, seeing your curiosity, quietly translates it for you. I am very cold. You can almost feel the presence of that long-dead monk, huddled in this same cold room, his fingers stiff, his misery so acute that he had to record it for posterity. It's a message in a bottle, a whisper of shared experience across the centuries. These marginalia, as they are called, are a source of endless fascination for historians. They are a window into the unwritten life of the medieval mind. You find complaints, just like the Irish monks. Writing is excessive drudgery, one scribe notes. It crooks your back, dims your sight, twists your stomach and your sides. You found that one last week, and it made you laugh out loud, a sound that earned you a stern glare from the armorius. You find little poems, riddles, and jokes. You find incredibly elaborate doodles, hybrid monsters with the head of a man and the body of a snail, knights jousting with butterflies, rabbits playing trumpets. This playful, often bizarre, marginal art is known as droll aries. The meaning of these droll aries is a topic of intense academic debate. Were they simple, bored doodles, the medieval equivalent of scribbling in your notebook during a long meeting? Were they allegorical, with the snail representing the Lombards, a group often in conflict with the church, or the rabbits symbolizing something more profound that we have now lost the key to? Or were they a form of carnivalesque humor, a way to subvert the seriousness of the sacred text with moments of pure, anarchic fun? The truth is probably a little of all three. They are a testament to the fact that even in the most rigid and pious of environments, the human impulse for creativity, complaint, and silliness cannot be completely suppressed. You find practical notes too. A scribe will write dim in the margin to indicate that the master copy he was working from was hard to read at that spot. Another will write a note to the future illuminator, the artist who will add the pictures, saying, "Put a picture of a king here," a vital instruction for the book's production line. You turn a page and find your favorite one yet. In the side margin, next to a passage about the temptations of the flesh, a scribe has drawn a tiny, perfect sketch of a pointing finger. And next to it, he has written a single word, cave, Latin for beware. It's a personal commentary, a quiet nudge to the future reader, a shared moment of understanding. Closing the heavy book and returning the key to the armarius, you go back to your own desk. The ache in your back feels a little less pronounced. The page in front of you feels a little less lonely. You are part of a long, unbroken chain. The men who wrote in these margins were not just holy vessels of text. They were real people. They got cold. They got bored. They had a sense of humor. They loved their cats. And knowing that makes the silence of the room feel less like an absence and more like a space filled with the quiet, friendly ghosts of your predecessors. You have served your time. Your hand is steady, your letters are consistent, and your tolerance for the cold, the silence, and the aching in your back has been proven. You are no longer a novice, but a proficient, reliable scribe. You have produced several complete, if unadorned, manuscripts of the Psalms. Your work is clean, precise, and, you have to admit, a little boring. It is the solid, respectable prose of the scriptorium. But you have seen what is possible. In the locked chests, you have seen the books that sing, the pages that glow with a life and color that transcends mere text. You have seen the work of the illuminators. One day, the abbot himself enters the scriptorium, a rare event that causes a subtle stir in the room. He is accompanied by the armarius. They walk past the desks of the junior monks, past your own desk, and stop at the workstation of Brother Anselm, the oldest and most revered craftsman in the room. They speak in low, hushed tones. You see the abbot gesture towards a new set of unbound, freshly written pages, a new gospel book, the most important project the abbey has undertaken in years. Then the abbot looks across the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the scribes. His gaze lands on you. He says something to the armarius, and the armarius nods. Later that day, the armarius approaches your desk. He doesn't bring you another stack of blank parchment. Instead, he simply beckons you to follow him. He leads you to the far end of the scriptorium, to a series of desks that are different from the others. They are larger, flatter, and positioned to catch the purest northern light, which is less harsh and changes less throughout the day. This is the domain of the illuminators, the artists. It is a space you have only ever admired from a distance. Here the smells are different. You still smell the parchment, but it is mixed with the scent of beeswax, buff egg yolk, and a faint, almost floral scent of exotic gums and resins. The tools are different too. Instead of just knives and quills, you see palettes made of shells, small stone mortars and pestles, and delicate brushes with impossibly fine points. The armarius explains with a series of quiet gestures that your work as a text scribe, a scriptor, is complete for now. You have shown the requisite skill and patience. You are ready to begin learning the next level of the craft, the art of decoration, of illuminatio. The word itself means to light up, and that is precisely what you will be doing, lighting up the word of God with color and with gold. Your first lesson will not be in painting but in drawing. You will not be adding glorious color, but the preliminary sketches that will guide the final artwork. This rule is often called the rubricator. The name comes from the Latin word rubrica, meaning red earth, because the primary job was to write in the titles, the headings, and the first letter of a new chapter, usually using a vibrant red ink. This red lettering helped to break up the dense block of black text, guiding the reader's eye and making the manuscript easier to navigate. The red ink is made differently from your standard black iron gall. Its base is often vermilion, a brilliant red pigment made from the mineral cinnabar mercuric sulfide, which had to be imported and was quite expensive. A cheaper, more common alternative was red lead, a pigment made by roasting lead shavings until they oxidized into a bright orange red powder. Making it was a toxic process, and using it was a skill. The ink was thicker than iron gall and required a different touch with the quill. The Armarius hands you a page that you yourself wrote weeks ago. It's a clean, perfect page of black text, but there are gaps. You left a space for the first letter of the first word, the incipit. You also left space for a title. Your job now is to fill those spaces. You switch your ink on for one filled with the thick, bright reading. You must now write in a different style, often a larger, more ornate script than the main body of text. Your hand, so accustomed to the rhythm of the small Gothic letters, feels clumsy and slow forming these larger shapes. Your first red eye is a little crooked, but rubrication is just the beginning. The next step is to add the intricate, decorative patterns that often surround the first letter of a chapter, a practice known as filiation. These are fine, thread-like lines, often in red or blue, that sprout from the letter itself and extend up and down the margin, ending in little stylized leaves or curls. It requires an incredibly fine quill and a steady hand. The Armarius shows you how, creating a delicate web-like pattern that seems to grow organically from the letter. You try. Your lines are thick and clumsy. Your curls are misshapen blobs. It is a humbling experience. You had become confident, even proud of your skill as a scribe. Now, you are a novice all over again, fumbling with a new technique. It's a stark reminder that bookmaking wasn't one job, but a whole series of interconnected crafts. The question of who did what is a complex one for historians. In a large, wealthy scriptorium, you might have a team, a parchment maker, a ruler, a text scribe, a rubric, or a junior illuminator for the filigree, and a master illuminator for the main pictures. In a smaller, poorer house, one highly talented monk might have been responsible for every single stage. You spend the day practicing these red lines, these filigree patterns. You are no longer just copying. You are decorating. You are taking the first small step away from pure information and towards pure art. The work is even more detailed, more eye-straining than text writing. But as you look at the page with its stark black text now enlivened by the bright, joyful red, you feel a new kind of satisfaction. The page is no longer just a carrier of words. It is beginning to be beautiful. It is beginning to light up. Your world, once a monochrome landscape of black ink on cream parchment, is about to explode into color. After you have mastered the delicate art of reading, rubricating, and filigree, the Armarius decides you are ready for the next, most vibrant stage, making the pigments. An illuminator does not simply receive his paints, he creates them, transforming dull rocks and humble plants into the brilliant hues that will make his pages sing. The process is part chemistry, part alchemy, and part prayer. He leads you to the illuminator's corner of the scriptorium, to a sturdy stone workbench that is stained with the ghosts of 100 different colors. On it are arranged a collection of small, heavy stone bowls, mortars, and fist-sized, smooth stones, pestles. Next to them are several small, unassuming cloth sacks. The Armarius opens one and pours a handful of its contents onto the stone slab. It's a pile of rough, vivid blue pebbles. He holds one up to the light. It glitters. This, he communicates with a gesture of awe, is lapis lazuli. It's a stone you have only heard of in whispers. It comes from a single source, a series of remote mines in a far-off land called Afghanistan. It has traveled thousands of miles, passed through the hands of countless merchants, a journey that takes more than a year to reach this quiet monastery. It is, ounce for ounce, more valuable than gold. And from this stone you will make the king of all colors, ultramarine blue. The name itself means from over the sea. It is the color of the Virgin Mary's robes, the color of heaven. Its purity and expense are a direct reflection of its holiness. Your task is to grind this precious stone into a powder fine enough to be used as a pigment. The armoria shows you how. You place a few of the pebbles into the hard stone mortar. You take the heavy pestle, and you begin to crush. It's not easy. The stone is incredibly hard. You have to put your weight into it, breaking the pebbles down into smaller and smaller chunks. Then the real work begins. You must grind the granules in a circular motion, over and over for hours. The goal is to produce a powder as fine as flour. The quality of the color, its brilliance and intensity, depends entirely on the fineness of the grind. As you work, a dust of the most breathtaking electric blue begins to coat the mortar and your hands. This is just one color. Next, he shows you a piece of soft green rock. This is malachite. When ground, it will yield a brilliant, vibrant green. He brings out a lump of gritty, reddish orange powder. This is reed lead which you've used for ink, but in its powdered form it is a base for a fiery orange paint. He shows you a bag of chucky, pale yellow earth from a local quarry. This is yellow ochre, a humble but essential color for creating flesh tones and gentle, sunny hues. He has dried flowers welled, which, when boiled, will produce a transparent yellow dye. He has gnawed, dried roots from the madder plant, which will be ground and treated to create a deep, rich rose red. Each color has its own recipe, its own secret process. Creating ultramarine blue from the ground lapis lazuli is a particularly complex process, a piece of chemistry that scholars are still trying to perfectly replicate. The powdered blue stone is not just mixed with a binder. It is kneaded into a soft dough of beeswax, pine resin, and gum. This dough is then left to sit for days. Then the dough is gently washed and kneaded in a bowl of warm water. The finest, purest particles of blue are the first to be released from the waxy ball and settle at the bottom of the bowl. This first extraction is the most brilliant, most prized grade of ultramarine. Subsequent washings release duller, grayer particles which are used for less important areas. It's a miracle of fractional extraction, discovered by trial and error. The binder you mix these pigments with is also crucial. For manuscript illumination, the most common binder is egg tempera. The armoria shows you how to crack an egg, carefully separating the yolk from the white. The clear, sticky egg white called GL air is beaten and left to stand, then used as a simple, transparent binder, perfect for lighter colors or for creating a glossy varnish. The yolk is the real workhorse. You must carefully pierce the yolk sac and let the rich, yellow liquid run out, leaving the membrane behind. This pure yolk is then mixed with a little water and a drop of vinegar to preserve it. And then, finally, you add your precious powdered pigment. You mix them together on a shell palette until you have a smooth, opaque, vibrant paint. You spend your days grinding, mixing, and learning the unique personalities of each color. The gritty resistance of malachite under the pestle, the surprising softness of yellow ochre, the incredible, almost unbelievable color that blooms from the dull blue lapis stone. This is the sensory world of the illuminator, a world of texture, dust, and brilliant, earthy color. You are not just a scribe anymore. You are becoming a painter, a color maker, a craftsman who can transform the very stones of the earth into the light of heaven. And soon you will learn to apply that light to the page itself. You have created your colors. They sit on your workbench in a row of seashells, glowing like jewels. The celestial ultramarine, the vibrant malachite green, the earthy red of baked lead, the warm sun of yellow ochre. They are beautiful, but they are inert. They are missing the one element that truly defines an illuminated manuscript, the element that gives it its name. They are missing the light. They are missing the gold. Applying gold leaf to a manuscript is the pinnacle of the illuminator's art. It is a process so delicate, so fraught with peril, that it is reserved for the most skilled hands in the most important books. The Armorius has decided that your hand is now steady enough to learn. The application of gold is not just a decorative choice. It is a theological statement. Gold, which never tarnishes or fades, is the symbol of divinity, of eternity, of the light of God himself. To place it on the page is to give the reader a glimpse of heaven. There are two main methods for applying gold. The first, simpler method is to use powdered gold, mixed with a binder like gum arabic to create a kind of paint. You can paint this on with a brush. Just like any other color, it's effective for fine lines and small details, but it doesn't create the brilliant, reflective, three-dimensional effect that makes the most glorious manuscripts so breathtaking. For that, you need the second method, applying gold leaf. The Armarius opens a small, soft leather pouch. From it, he carefully extracts a tiny book, no bigger than his thumb. The pages are not parchment, but thin, tissue-like paper. He opens it, and nestled between the sheets are squares of pure gold, beaten so impossibly thin that they seem to float on the air. This is gold leaf, a single gold coin. He explains with a gesture, can be hammered by a specialized craftsman called a gold beater into hundreds of these ethereal sheets. They are so thin, less than 0.1 micrometers, that light can pass through them. If you hold a sheet up to the window, it glows with a pale, greenish blue light. They are so light that a sudden breath or a draft from the window can send them scattering into 1,000 tiny, irretrievable fragments. You cannot simply glue this to the page. It would be flat and lifeless. To achieve that polished, raised, three-dimensional glow, you must first build a foundation. This foundation is called gesso. The Armarius shows you the recipe. It's a thick, viscous paste made from slaked plaster of Paris gypsum, a little bit of white lead for body, and a sweetener like sugar or honey, which helps it adhere and remain slightly flexible. This mixture is bound together with a bit of GLR, the same egg white binder you've used before. With a fine brush, you carefully apply this thick, pinkish white gesso to the areas of the page that will be gilded, the background of a large initial, the halo of a saint, the first letter of a sacred name. You have to build it up layer by layer, letting each one dry until you have a smooth, raised cushion of gesso on the page. This is a painstaking process. If your gesso is lumpy or uneven, your gold will be too. Once the gesso is completely dry and has been polished smooth, the terrifyingly delicate part begins. The Armarius demonstrates. He takes a small, flat, wide brush made of squirrel hair. He brushes against his own cheek, picking up the faintest trace of oil from his skin. This creates just enough static electricity to allow him to pick up a single sheet of the fragile gold leaf. He carefully lays it over the raised gesso. Now for the magic. He leans in close to the page, his lips almost touching the gold, and he breathes on it. A gentle, warm, moist puff of air, a huff. This single breath transfers a microscopic layer of moisture onto the gesso, activating the honey or sugar in the mixture and making it instantly, but briefly, sticky. He immediately tamps the gold leaf down with a soft puff of cotton. The gold adheres to the sticky gesso. He repeats the process, huffing and pressing, laying down more sheets of gold, overlapping them slightly, until the entire gesso area is covered. The result is a rough, matte gold shape. It's not yet the brilliant, mirror-like surface you've seen in the old books. For that, one final step is required, burnishing. He takes a special tool, a piece of polished hematite or agate, a smooth, hard stone, set into a wooden handle. Placing the manuscript on a firm, flat surface, he begins to rub the gold leaf with the stone. At first he rubs gently, then with increasing pressure. As he rubs, a miraculous transformation occurs. The dull matte gold begins to gleam. The more he polishes, the brighter it gets, until the raised shape is no longer a patch of gold leaf, but a solid, gleaming, mirror-smooth surface of pure, reflective gold. It catches the light from the window and throws it back at you, a dazzling, divine fire. This is the process historians find so fascinating, the one that truly feels like alchemy. The thought of a monk in a silent room breathing life into a page with a gentle huff of air and then polishing it with a stone until it shines like the sun is the very essence of this quiet, magical craft. Now it is your turn. Your hand shakes as you apply the gesso. You hold your breath as you try to pick up the impossibly fragile gold leaf. You lean in, huff, and press. You have trapped the light of heaven on a piece of animal skin. You are an illuminator. You have mastered the elements. You can command the steadfast line of black ink, the joyful shout of red, the celestial glow of gold, and the earthy chorus of your ground stone pigments. Now you must combine them all not just to decorate but to tell a story. You are ready to move beyond the abstract beauty of initials and borders and into the realm of figurative art. You are ready to paint a miniature. The term miniature can be misleading. It has nothing to do with the size of the painting, though most are, by necessity, quite small. The word actually derives from the Latin miniar, meaning to color with minium, which was the name for that red lead pigment used for the headings and initial letters. In time, the term for the reed ink came to describe any picture within a manuscript. Your task is to create a small scene and historiated initial, a large letter that contains a picture within its loops and bows, or even a full-page illustration that will face the first page of a gospel. The abbot has commissioned a new book of hours, a personal prayer book for a wealthy patron. Your master brother Anselm is overseeing the project, and he has assigned a small historiated initial to you. It is the letter D for Deus, and inside the bowl of the letter, you are to paint a scene of the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel visiting the Virgin Mary. It's a test. It's a small contained scene, but it requires all the skills you have learned. First comes the planning. On a piece of scrap parchment, you sketch out the composition with a lead point. You must fit two figures, an angel and a young woman, into the curved space of a capital D. You think about the composition. Gabriel on the left, Mary on the right. How will they stand? What will they wear? You decide to place a lily, the symbol of Mary's purity, in a vase between them. Every element is symbolic. Every gesture has a meaning. You are not just painting a picture, you are encoding theology. Once Brother Anselm approves your sketch, you move to the real page. This is the one that you yourself wrote the text on months ago, leaving a careful, measured blank space for this very purpose. The first step is to transfer your drawing. You lightly sketch the outlines of the figures onto the parchment with your lead point. Then with a quill and a very pale, watery brown ink, you go over the lines, finalizing the composition. Next comes the gold, the halos around the heads of Mary and Gabriel, and perhaps some of the angel's wings will be gilded. You carefully apply the raised gesso, let it dry, and then, with a nervous huff of breath, you lay down the fragile gold leaf. You burnish it until it shines with a divine light. The most sacred elements are now in place. Now, you begin to paint, and there is a strict, almost ritualistic order to the process. You work from the background to the foreground. First, you lay down the base colors, a flat layer of your precious ultramarine for Mary's robes, a paler blue or a simple ochre for the background architecture, a soft green for the floor. At this stage, the painting looks flattened cartoonish, a collection of simple color-blocked shades. The magic comes with the layering. Egg tempera is a translucent medium. You build up color and form not by mixing colors on a palette, but by layering them on the page. To create shadows on Mary's blue robe, you will not add black. That would create a dead, muddy color. Instead, you will apply a thin wash of a darker blue, or perhaps a glaze of a contrasting color like a deep red, which creates a richer, more vibrant shadow. To create highlights, you don't add white. You add successive layers of the base color mixed with increasing amounts of lead white, building up towards the lightest point. You use a brush made from just a few hairs of a squirrel's tail, held in the tip of a feather. The strokes required are infinitesimally small. For the faces, you start with a base layer of greenish earth pigment, a technique called verdicchio. This cool green underpainting, when seen through the subsequent thin layers of pink and white flesh tones, creates a surprising sense of realism and depth. It's a counterintuitive trick of the trade that gives the skin a lifelike luminosity. The question of where these artistic styles came from is a subject of endless fascination for art historians. Did the techniques evolve independently in isolated monasteries, or was there a network of influence with traveling artists or model books, collections of drawings of saints and scenes, circulating between scriptoria spreading new ideas and styles? The consensus is that it was a mix of both deep-rooted local traditions and the slow diffusion of new trends, carried along the same pilgrimage and trade routes as the lapis lazuli itself. Your focus narrows until the entire world disappears. Your universe is the tiny space inside the letter D. You are painting Gabriel's wings, feather by tiny feather. You are painting the delicate folds of Mary's robe as it pools on the floor. You are painting the expression on her face, a mixture of humility and awe. It is the most intensely focused work you have ever done. Your back aches, your eyes burn, but you don't notice. Finally, after hours that have felt like minutes, you apply the last and most important details. With the blackest ink and the finest possible quill, you outline the figures. You add the pupils to their eyes, the lines of their mouths, the delicate curls of their hair. These final black lines are what bring the painting to life, giving it definition and clarity. You are done. You lean back, your body screaming in protest, and you look at your work. Inside the D, no bigger than your thumb, is a complete, vibrant, glowing scene. The gold halos catch the light. The ultramarine of Mary's robe is so deep you feel you could fall into it. It is not just a letter anymore. It is a window into a sacred moment. You have not just copied the word of God. You have given it a face. You are standing in the scriptorium late one afternoon, cleaning your brushes. The low, golden light of the setting sun streams through the high windows, illuminating the dancing dust motes and casting long shadows across the stone floor. You have just completed another miniature, a depiction of the Nativity. It is, you believe, your best work yet. The ultramarine of Mary's robe is deep and pure. The gold of the hay in the manger shines with a humble light, and the expression on the Christ child's face is, you hope, one of divine peace. You feel a quiet surge of pride, a craftsman's satisfaction in a job well done. Your work will be part of a magnificent altar book commissioned by a wealthy duchess to be her private devotional text. You imagine her opening the book, her eyes falling on your miniature. You hope she will find it beautiful, that it will aid her prayers, that she will appreciate the skill and the long hours you poured into its creation. But then, a strange and humbling thought enters your mind. What if she never sees it? What if this book, once it is finished, bound, and delivered, is barely ever opened? What if it spends most of its life shut, a beautiful object kept in a silk pouch, a symbol of her piety and wealth more than a tool for daily use? And what about the other books you have worked on, the great gospel books for the Abbey's own library? They are brought out for services, their pages turned with reverent care. But how many people truly see the tiny details you labored over? The subtle shading on a saint's cheek, the perfect curl of a filigree vine in the border, the way the gold catches the light at a certain angle. Perhaps only a handful of your brothers will ever notice. Then an even more profound thought occurs to you. What if no one is meant to see it? You look over at Brother Anselm, your master. He is working on the facing page to your nativity scene. It is a full-page illustration of the tree of Jesse, a complex and sprawling family tree of Christ. The level of detail is almost beyond comprehension. There are dozens of figures, each with a unique face and posture, each painted with the same meticulous care, from the great King David at the bottom to the smallest, most obscure ancestor hidden in a curling leaf at the very top. You know for a fact that some of the details he is painting are so small they can barely be seen with the naked eye. He is painting for an audience of one. He is painting for the eye of God. This was a powerful and pervasive idea in the medieval mindset, one that can be difficult for a modern mind to fully grasp. The concept of art for art's sake did not exist. The work was not about self-expression or gaining fame. It was an act of worship, a form of prayer made manifest in golden pigment. Every perfect line, every flawless patch of color was an offering. The immense labor and the ruinous expense of the materials were a testament to the glory of God. The beauty of the work was a reflection of the beauty of His creation. Historians and art historians still grapple with this concept. Was this piety the sole motivation? Or was there also a sense of professional pride, a desire to create a masterpiece that would be the envy of other monasteries? Did scribes and illuminators feel ambition, rivalry, a desire for recognition? The answer is almost certainly yes. They were human after all. The anonymous nature of the work, most manuscripts are unsigned, was not necessarily a sign of pure humility. In some cases, the scribe's name might be recorded in the coffin, a small note at the end of the book, but often they labored in obscurity. This anonymity was part of the subjugation of the individual ego to the collective, divine purpose. You begin to see your own work in this new, humbling light. You think of the hours you spent grinding the lapis lazuli, transforming a dull stone into a celestial blue. That act of transformation was itself a prayer. You think of the moment you breathed on the gesso to affix the gold leaf. You were literally breathing your own life, your spiritus, onto the page to make it shine with divine light. The work is not just a product, it is a process, a devotional practice. The satisfaction you feel in your craft you realize is not just pride. It is the quiet joy of having offered your best. It doesn't matter if a duchess sees it, or if your brothers notice the tiny details. God sees. God, whose eye can perceive the smallest ant in the most distant star, can certainly see the love and care you poured into painting the fold of a robe. This thought does not diminish your work. On the contrary, it elevates it. It frees you from the need for human approval. It makes the long hours, the aching back, the straining eyes, not just a job, but a sacred duty. You are not just making a beautiful object. You are participating in a divine conversation. Your audience is the creator of color and light itself. The bell rings for vespers, its deep tone echoing through the now darkening scriptorium. You carefully clean your brushes, put the shell lettuce away, and cover your work. As you walk out of the silent room, you feel a new sense of purpose. You are not an artist seeking praise. You are a monk offering your hands and your eyes in a quiet, anonymous act of devotion. And in the grand cosmic scheme of things, it feels infinitely more important. The weeks turn into months, and the pages of the Dutch assessed book of hours accumulate. Each one is a small universe of color, light, and text. The Annunciation you painted seems like a lifetime ago. You have since rendered scenes of the Visitation, the Adoration of the Magi, and the flight into Egypt. Your skill has grown, your hand has become more confident, and your sense of color more daring. But today is a special day. Today you are finishing the last illustration on the last page assigned to you. The page sits before you, a complex tapestry of your assembled skills. In the center is the block of perfect, rhythmic black text you wrote so long ago. Your red-inked rubrication provides the title. In the margin, a delicate filigree of blue and red vines, which you now create with a steady and practiced hand, snakes its way around the text block. A large historiated initial C begins the prayer, and within it, you have just completed a miniature of the coronation of the Virgin, where Christ places a crown on his mother's head in heaven. Now, you are applying the finishing touches. With your finest brush, you add the tiniest white dots to the pupils of the eyes, giving them a lifelike sparkle. You use a thin wash of carbon black to deepen the shadows in the drapery, making the forms pop. You are checking every detail, every line, every patch of color. The gold of the crowns and halos has been burnished to a brilliant, mirror-like sheen. The ultramarine of the robes is a deep, velvety pool. The faces, no bigger than your thumbnail, are filled with serene, divine expression. You hold the page up, turning it in the light. The gold flashes, blinding you for a second. The colors seem to vibrate against the creamy white of the parchment. The black text provides a solid, grounding anchor for the whole composition. It is a harmonious whole. Text, decoration, and illustration are not separate elements. They are woven together into a single, unified object of breathtaking beauty. This is the moment of greatest satisfaction for a craftsman. It's the moment when all the disparate parts, all the long hours of tedious, repetitive labor, coalesce into a finished whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. You remember the long dead animal whose skin became this page. You remember the wasp and the oak tree that gave you your ink. You remember the perilous journey of the lapis lazuli from the mountains of the east. You remember the goose whose wing feather became your quill. You remember your own clumsy first attempts, the scraped away arrows, the aching back, the burning eyes. All of that struggle, all of that history, is embedded in this single, perfect sheet. You feel a profound connection to the object. It is not something you have merely made. It is something you have poured your own life into. Your breath is literally on the page, the moisture that fixed the gold to the gesso. The oils from your skin are on the burnishing tool. Your concentration, your patience, your reverence, all are now part of its fabric. In an era where most people owned nothing that they hadn't made themselves, this connection between maker and object was fundamental. It's a feeling largely lost in a world of mass production. Art historians often talk about the aura of an object like this. It's a sense of presence of history, of the human touch that is palpable when you see it in person. No digital reproduction, no matter how high the resolution, can capture the three-dimensional reality of the raised gold, the subtle texture of the parchment, the way the light interacts with the layers of egg tempera. You are not just looking at an image, you are in the presence of a relic, a survivor, a vessel of immense human effort. You place the finished page on a clean, felt-lined tray. It will now go to Brother Anselm for final inspection. He will look at it with his sharp, critical eye. He will spot the tiny imperfection you missed, the slightly hesitant line in the Virgin's veil. But you also know he will see the overall quality, the skill, the devotion. Later, this page will be laid with all the others, ready for the next stage of its journey, the binding. You lean back on your stool, a wave of pleasant exhaustion washing over you. You have done it. You have taken raw materials, skin, stone, metal, plant, and animal, and you have transformed them. You have created a single perfect page. The silence of the scriptorium settles around you, but it's a comfortable, companionable silence now. It's the silence of a job well done. You look at your hands, stained with hints of blue and green and red. They are the hands of a scribe, an illuminator, a creator. And for a moment in the quiet, fading light of the afternoon, that feels like the best thing in the world to be, your perfect page does not remain an independent object for long. It joins a growing stack of similarly beautiful sheets on a large, clean table in the center of the scriptorium. The work of the scribes and illuminators is finished. Now the manuscript moves into its final phase of production, a phase that requires a different set of skills, different tools, and a different kind of strength. The book must be given a body. It must be bound. The master binder, Brother Luke, is a man you rarely interact with. His workshop is adjacent to the scriptorium, but it feels like a different world. The delicate, dusty silence of your workspace is replaced by the smell of leather, wood and hot glue, and the sounds of hammering, sawing, and pressing. Brother Luke is built differently from the scribes. His shoulders are broad, and his hands are thick and calloused, with a strength you can only imagine. He is a carpenter and a leather worker as much as a craftsman of books. He begins the process by taking your finished pages and arranging them in the correct order. This is a crucial and nerve-wracking step. A single mistake here could render the entire book nonsensical. He then groups the pages into gatherings or quires. A quire is typically formed by taking 4 or 5 large sheets of parchment, folding them in half, and nesting them inside one another. This creates a small booklet of 8 or 10 leaves, 16 or 20 pages. The entire manuscript is composed of these individual quires, which will be sewn together to form the text block. You watch as he takes the first quire. Using an AWL, he pierces a series of holes along the crease of the fold. These holes are precisely aligned, passing through every sheet in the quire. This is where the sewing will happen. He then mounts a simple wooden frame on his workbench. On this frame, he stretches several thick, strong cords of hemp or leather thongs vertically. These cords will form the backbone of the book. Now comes the sewing, a process that is both strong and elegant. He takes the first quire, opens it to the centerfold, and places it against the vertical cords. With a long, strong needle and a thread of waxed linen, he begins to sew. He passes the needle through the first hole from the outside, brings it into the center of the fold, loops it around the first cord, and then passes it back out through the next hole. He continues this pattern down the length of the quire, effectively lashing the pages to the strong vertical supports. When he reaches the end of the first quire, he picks up the second and lays it on top, continuing the sewing process in the opposite direction. He goes back and forth, quire by quire, building up the text block. The thread connects each quire not only to the cords, but also to the quire before it, creating a strong, flexible, and interconnected whole. The question of sewing techniques is one that keeps book historians busy. Different regions and different time periods had their own distinct styles. Some used raised bands where the cord stood proud of the spine, creating visible ridges on the finished book. Others recessed the cords into grooves sawn into the spine, allowing for a perfectly smooth back. These subtle differences in sewing structure can help scholars today determine the origin and date of a manuscript that has lost all other identifying features. It's another layer of the book's secret history, hidden beneath the leather and wood. As you watch Brother Luke's strong, rhythmic movements, you'll be struck by the physicality of the work. It is a world away from the delicate, nerve-wracking precision of illumination. His hands are sure and powerful. The needle he uses is thick and formidable. The wax thread is as tough as fishing line. He is not just stitching paper, he is building a structure, an architecture for the words and pictures you so carefully created. Finally, all the quires are sewn together. The result is a thick, solid block of parchment pages, held together by the strong linen thread and the tough leather cords that now protrude from the spine. He places the text block in a large, heavy press and tightens it down, compressing the pages and ensuring the spine is solid and square. He then takes a hammer and carefully taps the spine, rounding it slightly, uncreating the gentle, curved shape that allows the book to open gracefully. The soul of the book, your words and pictures, is now complete. It has been given a skeleton of thread and cord. You look at the neat, solid block of pages, the edges still rough and uneven. It looks naked, vulnerable. It is waiting for its armor. It is waiting for its cover. Brother Luke wipes his hands on his leather apron and picks up two thick slabs of seasoned oak. The next stage of the journey is about to begin. The naked, sewn text block, with its protruding leather thongs, looks vulnerable. It needs protection, a suit of armor to shield its precious contents from the ravages of time, moisture, and use. This is where Brother Luke's carpentry skills come to the forefront. The foundation of a medieval binding is not cardboard or paperboard. It is wood. He selects 2 boards of seasoned oak cut to be slightly larger than the pages themselves. Oak is the preferred wood. It is hard, strong, and resistant to warping. He planes them down until they are perfectly smooth and of a uniform thickness. Then, using a small chisel and a gouge, he carves channels on the inside of each board. These channels are designed to house the leather thongs that stick out from the spine of the text block. This is the ingenious part of the binding process. He laces the leather thongs through the channels in the wood, pulling them tight, and then uses small wooden pegs or iron nails to secure them permanently. This physically integrates the text block with its wooden covers. The book is not a set of pages glued into a case. It is a single, unified structure. The boards are not just a cover. They are an extension of the book's own spine. This is why these books are so durable, why they have survived for 1,000 years. They are built like furniture. Once the boards are attached, he covers them with leather. A large, supple piece of calfskin or goatskin is soaked in water until it is pliable. It is then coated with a thick, sticky paste made from flour and water. He carefully stretches the damp leather over the wooden boards, covering the front, the spine, and the back in one continuous piece. He works the leather into the joints, smoothing out any air bubbles, and tucks the edges neatly on the inside of the boards, where they will be covered by a final passed-down sheet of parchment. Now the book looks like a book, but it is still plain. The final step of the binding process is decoration. For a standard library book, this might be the end of the process. But for the Duchess's book of hours, the cover must be as beautiful as its contents. Brother Luke begins the process of blind tooling. He takes a collection of small metal stamps, each with a different design cut into its tip. A reset, a fleur-de-lis, a tiny dragon, a simple geometric pattern. He heats these stamps over a small brazier. Then he presses the hot stamp firmly into the damp leather. It doesn't add any color, instead it leaves a dark, burnished, permanent impression in the leather. He creates intricate, repeating patterns, building up a rich, textured design across the entire surface of the cover. The arrangement of these stamped designs is another clue for book historians. Like a fingerprint, the specific combination of tools and patterns can often be traced to a specific workshop or monastery. The study of these bindings, called bibliology, is a highly specialized field, a detective story written in leather. For the most luxurious books, the decoration didn't stop there. The wooden boards might be carved, or even covered in precious materials. Some royal or imperial manuscripts were bound in ivory plaques, exquisitely carved with religious scenes. Others were covered in sheets of silver or gold, a practice known as a treasure binding. These bindings were often studded with uncut gems, sapphires, garnets, and pearls, transforming the book into a piece of jewelry, a holy relic in its own right. The debate rages among scholars. Were these opulent treasure bindings meant for practical use, or were they purely ceremonial objects, designed to sit on an altar and reflect the glory of God and the power of their owner? The truth is, they were likely both. The final touch is the clasps. Because parchment is essentially animal skin, it is highly sensitive to changes in humidity. It swells and contracts, and has a natural tendency to curl, putting strain on the sewing. To keep the book tightly shut and the pages flat, metal clasps are added. These are usually made of brass or bronze, consisting of a strap of leather or metal hinged to the back cover and a catch attached to the front. Brother Luke carefully hammers these into place. The clasps are the final piece of the armor, locking the book shut like a treasure chest. He holds up the finished volume. It is heavy, solid, magnificent. The dark leather gleams, the tooled patterns create a landscape of intricate shadows, and the brass clasps shine against the rich brown. It no longer feels like your work. The intimate, fragile pages you painted are now encased in this formidable fortress of wood, leather, and metal. It is ready for the world. It is ready for the centuries. The Duchess's Book of Hours is finished. It lies on a velvet cloth in the center of the abbot's study, a masterpiece of collaborative craft. The abbot, the armorius, Brother Luke, and you are all gathered to look at it one last time before it is sent to its new owner. It is a moment of quiet, collective pride. The book is not just a collection of prayers, it is a statement. It is a testament to the skill, wealth, and piety of your abbey. It is a perfect ambassador for your work. But what about the other books? The ones that aren't being sent out into the world, but are destined to live their entire lives within these stone walls. What is the fate of the great Bibles and the dense volumes of theology you have spent months copying? Their journey ends not in a noblewoman's hands, but here in the abbey's library. The library, as you know, is not a separate building you can walk into. The term library refers to the collection of books itself, which is housed in chests and cupboards, or armoriae from which your master, the armorius, gets his title, usually located in the cloister or near the scriptorium. The idea of a large, separate room for reading is a later development. For now, the books are kept under lock and key, protected as the treasures they are. The armorius logs the new gospel book into his records. He then carries it over to a long, heavy wooden lectern that stands against the wall of the cloister. The lectern is built like a church pulpit, tall and sturdy. But there is one crucial addition. Attached to the corner of the book's sturdy wooden cover is a small, strong metal ring. From this ring extends a 3-foot length of iron chain. The other end of the chain is looped around an iron bar that runs the length of the lectern. This is a chained library. The practice of chaining books was not a symbol of distrust, but of value. It was the medieval equivalent of a high-tech security system. A single large Bible could take a team of scribes and illuminators years to produce. Its value was equivalent to a small farm or a herd of livestock. Allowing such an object to be casually borrowed or, heaven forbid, stolen was unthinkable. Chaining was the most practical way to make the library's collection available to the members of the community for study, without risking its loss. You watch as the armorius locks the new book onto the rod. It joins a dozen other volumes already chained there. They sit on the slanted top of the lectern, their heavy covers closed. To read one, a monk must stand. There are no cozy armchairs or reading nooks. Study is an upright, formal, and often cold activity. You select the book you wish to consult, lift the heavy volume, and rest it on the lectern. The chain has just enough slack to allow you to open the book and read, but not enough to allow you to walk away with it. The image of a chained library can seem barbaric to a modern sensibility, as if the knowledge itself is being imprisoned. But the reality was the opposite. It was a system designed to promote access, not restrict it. It turned the cloister into a communal reference room. Any monk could come and consult the works of the church fathers or the lost scriptures without having to ask the armorius to unlock a chest for him. It was an act of profound communal trust, secured by a length of iron. Historians have studied the surviving examples of these chained libraries. like the one at Hereford Cathedral in England, to understand how they functioned. They were the original open-access collections. The arrangement of the books on the lecterns often followed a specific curriculum, guiding the student from the fundamental texts of Scripture to the more complex works of theology and philosophy. It was a physical embodiment of a course of study. Of course, the system had its drawbacks. The constant friction of the chains could damage the bindings. The books were exposed to the dampened cold of the cloister, and the collection could not grow beyond the physical space of the lecterns. But for centuries it was the most effective solution for preserving and sharing a collection of priceless, handmade objects. As you look at the row of chain books, you feel a strange sense of finality. This is the end of the line. This gospel which you poured so much of your life into will spend the rest of its existence here, tethered to this spot. It will be read by generations of monks to come, its pages turned by hands that have not yet been born. Its purpose is not to travel, but to endure, to be a permanent, immovable anchor of knowledge and faith within these walls. The chain is not a prison. It is a promise that the book and the words it contains will always be here. It is a promise of permanence. Life in the scriptorium settles into a comfortable, predictable cycle governed not by a clock, but by the sun and the seasons. You mark the passage of time by the quality of the light that falls upon your desk. The single large window of the scriptorium becomes your calendar, your clock, and your only connection to the natural world outside the abbey's stone walls. In the long, bright days of summer, your workday is a marathon. The sun rises early, flooding the room with a clear, strong light that is perfect for the finest, most detailed work. You can begin your work just after the morning prayers and continue for hours, the light remaining sharp and true. On these days, you can complete a whole miniature or several pages of dense text. The air in the room is warm, sometimes even stuffy, filled with the scent of parchment and the drowsy hum of a bee that has wandered in through the open window. The light lingers late into the evening, and when the bell finally rings to signal the end of the workday, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment, a good day's labor offered and completed. Then comes autumn. The light begins to change. It slants lower in the sky, taking on a rich golden hue. The shadows in the room grow longer. Your workday shrinks. The sun rises later, and you must wait for the light to be strong enough to see the fine ruled lines on the page. It fades earlier in the afternoon, often turning a hazy, melancholic gray long before the vespers bell. On these days, you find yourself racing against the dying light, a quiet urgency entering your work as you try to finish a delicate brushstroke before the details blur into shadow. You see the leaves on the single oak tree outside the window turn from green to fiery red and then to brown, a slow, beautiful decay that mirrors the fading of the year. Winter is the hardest time. The light is a pale, weak, and precious commodity. On many days, the sky is a uniform sheet of gray, and the light that filters into the scriptorium is flat and unforgiving, straining your eyes and revealing every tiny imperfection in your work. The sun, when it does appear, is a low, watery disk that barely seems to climb above the horizon. Your workday is brutally short. You might only have 3 or 4 hours of usable light for the delicate work of illumination. The rest of the day is spent on coarser tasks, grinding pigments, preparing parchment, or perhaps reading in the dim cloister, your breath plumbing in the frigid air. The cold of winter is your constant enemy. It seeps through the glass of the window and up from the stone floor. You work bundled in your thickest wool tunic, your cowl pulled up. Your fingers grow stiff and disobedient. You have to constantly stop to rub them, to blow on them, to try and coax some life back into them. Your paint thickens in the cold. Your ink flows sluggishly from the quill. Progress is slow, painstaking. Each finished letter feels like a small victory against the encroaching darkness and cold. The world outside the window is often white, covered in a blanket of snow that reflects the stark and forgiving light into the room. It's a beautiful but sterile landscape, and then, just when you think the winter will never end, you see the first signs of spring. The light begins to return. It stays a little longer each afternoon, and it seems to have a new strength, a new warmth. You see the first green shoots emerging from the cold earth in the cloister garden. The birds begin to sing again, A sense of hope and renewal permeates the abbey. The scriptorium feels less like a cold cell and more like a place of gentle, focused work once more. Your output increases. The pages seem to fly by, fueled by the returning energy of the sun. This deep, intimate connection to the natural cycles of light and season is a fundamental part of the medieval experience that is almost entirely lost to the modern world. We flip a switch and banish the darkness. We turn a dial and banish the cold. Our work isn't tethered from the sun. For you, the sun is your collaborator, your partner, and your master. It dictates the rhythm and the pace of your entire existence. Historians debate the practical impact of this. Did manuscript production grind to a near halt in the depths of winter? Or did scribes switch to tasks that required less light and precision? The evidence suggests a dramatic slowdown. The quality of work can sometimes be seen to dip in sections of manuscripts believed to have been written during the winter months. It's a reminder that these incredible works of art were created not in a climate-controlled museum, but in a world governed by the raw, unmitigated power of the natural world. You look up from your page and out the window. The afternoon sun is bright and warm. It's late spring. The oak tree is covered in fresh, vibrant green leaves. You take a deep breath, thankful for the light, for the warmth, for the time you have been given. You dip your quill in the ink and return to your work, making the most of every precious sun-drenched minute. The peaceful rhythm of the seasons becomes the rhythm of your life. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. You are a craftsman in a world that feels eternal, unchanging. Your skills, honed over years of patient practice, feel as permanent as the stone walls of the abbey itself. The thought that this way of life, this sacred craft, could ever end is as outlandish as the idea that the sun might fail to rise. Then, one evening, a visitor arrives. He is not a noble patron or a wandering pilgrim, but a brother from a Clun IAC house in Mainz, a bustling city in the German lands. He has been on the road for weeks, and he brings with him the dust of the world and a strange, excited energy that feels alien in the calm, ordered quiet of your abbey. During the brief period of permitted conversation, after the evening meal, he begins to speak, and the story he tells is so strange that at first you are certain he is joking, or that you have misunderstood his heavily accented Latin. He speaks of a man in his city, a goldsmith by the name of Gutenberg. This man, the visitor says, has devised a way to create books without scribes. The very idea is absurd. A book without a scribe is like a harvest without a farmer. The other monks scoff. How is it possible? Does he have 100 men writing at once? No, the visitor insists, his eyes wide. There is no writing. There is no quill. He says this Gutenberg has created tiny, individual letters out of metal. Hundreds of identical as hundreds of BS and so on. He arranges these metal letters into words, locks them into a frame, and then this is the part you cannot comprehend. He inks them all at once and presses them onto the paper with a machine. Brother Thomas, the old master, shakes his head, presses them, like cheese. The ink would be a smudge, a disaster. It's a different kind of ink, the visitor explains, struggling for the right words. It's oily and thick, like a painter's varnish, and the machine is a marvel of engineering. A great screw press like the ones we use for making wine or pressing paper. The image is jarring, almost sacrilegious. The delicate, holy act of creating God's word, reduced to the brute, mechanical force of a wine press. You imagine the groan of the screw, the greasy smell of the ink. It sounds like a blacksmith's workshop, not a scriptorium. But the quality, you ask. Speaking up for the first time, it must be hideous, cold, ugly, without a soul. It cannot have the grace of a well-cut quill, the life of a human hand. Here, the visitor hesitates. The letters are surprisingly uniform, he admits, then very black. But this is the strangest part. After he has printed the page of black text, he leaves blank spaces. Then he hires men, rubricators and illuminators like you, to go back and paint the red titles and the great initials in by hand. They even leave space for miniatures. A confused silence falls over your small group. This makes no sense. Why would anyone combine such a crude, mechanical process with the sacred, painstaking art of illumination? It sounds like a monster, a hybrid of the profane and the divine. The academic debate today is about this very moment of transition. Was the printing press immediately recognized as a revolution that would shatter the medieval world? Or was it, as it seems to you now, viewed as a strange and slightly vulgar curiosity? The evidence suggests the latter. The first printed books, like the famous Gutenberg Bible, went to great lengths to mimic the appearance of manuscripts. They weren't trying to create a new aesthetic, but rather to perfect a faster, cheaper way of replicating the old one. They were, in essence, trying to create a manuscript without a scribe. The monks in your circle come to a swift conclusion. This invention might be useful for turning out cheap, disposable things, indulgences perhaps, or legal notices for the town council. But it could never, ever replace a true book. It could never have the permanence of parchment, the spiritual value of a scribe's devotional labor, the heavenly glow of real gold leaf applied with a breath and a prayer. It is a clever trick, nothing more. Day fad that will pass. The bell rings for the great silence, ending the conversation. You walk back to your cell through the cold, quiet cloister. You lie down on your simple straw mattress, but your mind is buzzing. A machine for writing, metal letters, hoity ink. The concepts feel jagged and wrong, an intrusion into your soft, organic world of feather and skin. You reassure yourself that the others are right. It is a novelty. It means nothing. You close your eyes and summon the familiar, comforting image of your desk. You picture the smooth, creamy surface of the parchment. You feel the perfect, familiar balance of your favorite quill in your hand. You hear that sound, the gentle, rhythmic scratch, scratch, scratch. That is the sound of creating a book. It's a sound that has existed for 1,000 years. It is real, solid, and true. It is the sound of your world. And surely you tell yourself as you drift off to sleep, it is a sound that will exist forever. You are applying the final stroke of color. It is a tiny speck of lead white, a highlight on the Virgin's pearl earring in a glorious, full-page miniature of the Assumption. Your brush is made of 3 squirrel hairs. The movement is so small, it is barely a movement at all, just a touch. There, it is done. The book is finished. A wave of profound, bone-deep satisfaction, the feeling you have come to cherish above all others, should be washing over you. But today it doesn't come. In its place is a quiet, hollow echo. The words of the visiting monk from Mainz have been a seed of doubt planted in the fertile soil of your mind, and in the quiet weeks since, it has sprouted. The aroma of the printing press has changed the very air in the scriptorium. It has changed the way you see your own work. This final, perfect page, the culmination of more than a year of labor from a dozen different hands, suddenly feels fragile. Not physically fragile. It is a robust object of wood, skin, and thread. It feels conceptually fragile. Its value, its very reason for being, is predicated on the immense difficulty of its creation. And if that difficulty can be bypassed by a machine, what then? You run your finger over the burnished gold of a saint's halo. It is so smooth, so full of light. But the light it reflects seems different now. It is no longer the light of eternity, but the beautiful, fading light of a sunset. You take up your quill one last time. You turn to the very end of the book, to the final blank page. Here, it is tradition to write a colophon, a brief note from the scribe. It is the one place where your voice, your individual identity, is permitted to appear. With your most careful, formal script, you write, "This book was finished in the year of our Lord 1470, in the Abbey of St. Giles, by the hand of the humble Brother Leo. May the one who reads it say a prayer for his soul." It is a standard formula, one you have written before. But today the words feel heavy with a new meaning. You are not just asking for a prayer for your own soul, but for the soul of your craft. The debate that historians will have centuries from now is already raging inside your own heart. Is this new invention a tool or a threat? Will it be a servant to the craft of illumination, freeing up artists from the drudgery of text to focus on pictures? Or will its cold, mechanical efficiency devour the entire ecosystem of the scriptorium, rendering your life's work obsolete? Some of your brothers see it as a potential partner, a way to produce more books more quickly, with the human touch still required for beauty. But you see it differently. You fear that the machine will not just replace the hand, but the heart. The slow, prayerful labor, the offering of time and effort, that is the very essence of the work. You cannot press a prayer from a machine. You carefully clean your brushes and your quill. You stopper your inkhorn. You rinse the shells you use for pilates. These are rituals you have performed thousands of times. They are the punctuation marks of your life. But for the first time, they feel like a conclusion. A final chapter. You look at your hands, the fingers stained with ink and pigment. These hands know how to scrape a mistake from a page, how to coax a heavenly blue from a common stone, how to make gold shine with the light of God. They are repositories of 1,000 years of accumulated knowledge, passed down from master to apprentice in an unbroken chain. And it occurs to you, with a certainty that is both profound and deeply sorrowful, that you may be one of the last links in that chain. The gentle, rhythmic scratch of the quill, the sound you once thought was eternal, now sounds impossibly small and quiet, the sound easily drowned out by the imagined, relentless clank and groan of a great machine. Your life's work has been to preserve the words of the past, but you never imagined that you would live to see the end of the future of that work.